Okay, hi. So we're here for our Mindset Monday. I'm parenting coach Vanessa Callahan right here serving you on the road. I'm in a friend's place with a studio here, dance studio behind me.
Okay,
but
hi.
I'm excited to
So we're here
serve
for
you
our Mindset
in this
Monday
Ask Me
here, serving
Anything
you
recording where we'll be talking about
studio here, dance.
what's been on your minds lately. So one thing that we do when we welcome people into the Facebook group is we ask you, what is the hardest thing about parenting right now and what would you like some support with? And so one of the things that we like to do is kind of pull together some key questions that might address, questions from several folks at once. We've got someone here on Zoom say hello, so we know that you're here. It looks like it might be Paloma, or maybe that is Paloma's mom. I don't know if it's Carla, maybe. Hi, good to have you here. Let me know that you're here in the chat. If you're also here on Facebook, let me know so I can say hello to you. And also feel free to put any question you might have straight into the comments or the chat so that we can address it today in this Ask Me Anything. Otherwise, we'll be rolling through the questions, things like, how do I discipline my kid more kindly? What do I do when my child is being really defiant? How do I address some of these behavior concerns in a way that aligns with my values, in a way that feels like not only are you being empowered, but you're also empowering your children. So important, right? So let me know again if you have a question. Otherwise, we'll get rolling here. So the first question it was brought up here by Jane. Jane is asking, especially with her 3.5-year-old, she has looks like a baby under one, 3.5-year-old and a 6-year-old. And she's saying literally everything is hard with her 3.5-year-old right now. How many of you can relate who've had have had a child in that age range, who just maybe doesn't like to roll with the sort of expectations or what it is that you're trying to get done that day? Can be so tricky, right? And so I feel for you, Jane. Yeah, and I'll tag you in this so you can find this later. But what I'm wondering is, when transitions are happening, what have you tried so far? So if you're listening to this and you have a child this age, or maybe later, Jane can let us know. What are some things you've tried so far to smooth out those transitions? And I love when we all crowdsource also. It's not just from me, but you can put your suggestions in the chat as well. Let me know, what are some things that have helped your 3.5 or 3-4-year-old transition? One thing I know is that children are very much in their own space. They're very egocentric at these younger ages. And so one thing that happens is they tend to get a little bit, very much so in their own world. And so one thing that can really help with a transition is recognizing that, first of all, like, okay, I'm going to come in and I'm going to want to transition my child, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be ready for a transition, or even, paying attention to what it is that you're saying or what it is that you want them to be paying attention to. And so you might find yourself doing things like repeating yourself over and over again. How many of you have been there before, right? Or you might find yourself wanting to, sort of like pick them up and pull them away from what they're doing, and then they sort of try to ignore you, or even like kind of yell and get upset at you for trying to pull them into, the next thing to transition. And so some things that we can do is like acknowledge, okay, so if they're in their own zone doing their own thing, we really kind of need to meet them there and get into their worlds. Since they're so what's called egocentric, it means that they're really focusing on whatever it is that they want, whatever it is that their attention is on, and they may be ignoring us, right? And so it's important for us to just acknowledge that so that we're not disappointed when our kids don't quickly sort of switch their attention to what we want them to put their attention on. So that's something I had to learn the hard way, being in the classroom for 15 years, 5 of those in preschool, and realizing like, wow, I really need to have some ways to sort of get into their world and shift their attention. So again, if you're listening to this and you have some ideas, please share them in the chat and say hello. Let us know that you're here. And I'm wondering what you've done to kind of shift their attention to help them transition so that they're not sort of stuck in what they're focusing on. So one thing that really works is to, I learned this early on in my career, is to kind of change up your, the volume of your voice and actually make it like, okay, it looks like it's time to go to the kitchen. And even if it's not how you normally talk, like I have this client of mine, I love her so much, Tiffany. She has found me when her daughter was about 2.5. And she's just like, wow, you know, I've had to become sort of a preschool teacher. I have had to find my like inner preschool teacher and, you know, do things like be silly and sort of get my kid interested in what it is I'm saying, because otherwise she'll tune me out. And that was painful for her for a while because it was kind of triggering, like, wow, my kid doesn't even like, doesn't want to talk to me or pay attention to me. And it can even feel kind of rejecting and frustrating at the minimum. And so knowing that, you know, it's actually a developmental need for our kids at times for us to do things like change up our voice and be silly and make it into a game or something to get their attention. Once we accept that that's developmentally normal, sometimes it can really help us because then we're not playing in these expectations that it should be different, right? So kind of embracing our toddler or preschooler or elementary age kid exactly where they are can make such a difference in our level of patience. And from that place of patience, we might feel more open to doing things like, you know, creating a little, like having a little song like time for bath time, we're going in the bath, you know, like just things like that, just to kind of get their attention. So that's one of the places I would start, Jane, particularly because your child is still an early preschooler and still in preschool. Now, for kids who are a little bit older, I'm talking like 4.5 and up, even, you know, maybe even for some kids who not until 5, they can actually become partners in what the routine looks like. And what's exciting about that is that that means then that they're going to be more likely to kind of co-conspire to, for example, get out the door or to make bath time fun. And you can start doing things like saying, okay, sweetheart, like we're going to go to the bath now. What could make bath time fun? And help them anticipate something fun they're going to do in the bath. And like, oh, let's do the bubbles again, you know, or let's play that story again, or could you read to me? Then they're more excited and more interested sort of naturally to transition. And that can be really helpful to smooth out the day. And the other thing is for yourself, Jane, and all of you working on these, you know, routines and kind of smoothing out the day, is are you clear about what the day looks like, right? I mean, so kids are always very, very, they can be quite perceptive on how much we have our own, you know what, together, you know, like if we're kind of all over the place about what's going to happen next, then oftentimes the kids sense that and they take advantage of the looseness of it. And so one thing that I do with all of my clients, one of the first modules we have, for example, in our year-long program, the Family Foundations Immersion, as we sit down and we actually look at what the routines that could be running more smoothly, like could the morning go more smoothly, or could that bath time routine go more smoothly? Or I have this one client who's working on, you know, getting from like playtime to and screen time kind of activities to dinner time and getting that transition smoothed out because it's always such an ordeal. And so they're really mapping that out together and then previewing that with their child, even role playing through it and other things that we do in that module to get the kids more on board. So that's something you can consider is like, have I actually written this routine out and really considered like what the steps are? Have I thought about ways of making it more fun, especially in the transitions? And have I gotten my child on board with what the plan is? So lots there for routines. I want to move on. But if you're listening, please do say hello and let me know you're here. Even let me know the ages of your kids, what city you're in, and if you have any questions you'd like me to address today and ask me anything, that's what I'm here for. Okay, so the next question is from, this is addressing Elaine Schneider, Linda Metzger, and Sophie Jane Cox. So we kind of grouped your questions up asking the question, how do I help my child have the confidence to be herself, even in the face of peer pressure? This is such a good question, especially for kids who are in middle to older childhood. So thinking 7 and up, especially. So kids, when they turn 6, 7, kind of shift their area of focus from their that kind of egocentric space that we were talking about to being able to actually empathize more with others, which then leads to them imagining how other people are perceiving them. So when it comes to peer pressure or kind of being influenced by peers or by the preferences or choices of peers, it starts to, you'll see it ramps up around 6, 7, starts to get, become kind of peak in middle childhood. And so I'm thinking about you, the folks who are Elaine, Linda, and Sophie. I know Sophie, you have an 8 and an 11-year-old, and then I think Elaine, you also have a middle childhood, yeah, 12 and 14-year-olds, yeah, heading into the teens, as well as Sophie. Let's see, you just did yours. We've got Linda as well with an 18-year-old. Yeah, so this is like not just peers, but also our interference Linda was asking about, I know. So when you're working on confidence and self-esteem and being really centered in yourself, one of the things that's really important for a sense of like knowing yourself in the world is getting a chance to explore a variety of sort of foods and activities and even like genres of music starts to become really important in this age, so that you can start to identify your preferences, because kids at this age become very identified with their preferences. And so being able to explore those and exposure to a lot of different, like kind of a diversity of different like foods and hobbies can be so helpful. Because I think one thing that we can kind of take for granted is that kids still like what they liked 2 years ago or a year ago. And we often are, I say parents are often lagging. We have like a lag behind our kids, which can be 6 months to 3 years, where we will bring up like Pokemon when they're like so far past that and now they're into boy bands, or like we bring up, I don't know, a sport that they tried when they were in kindergarten, when now they've moved on to a completely different sport. And it doesn't mean you can't bring it up, but just sort of staying in touch with what their current preferences are is a really big part of that, and seeing them and asking questions about it and really helping them explore it and express what it is they like about it can be so helpful. So having a strong sense of your preferences gives kids a stronger sense of identity. So that's one piece, one tip I have around self-esteem and confidence. And the other is practice expressing about it. So that's why asking the questions and getting curious and not necessarily inserting yourself in that conversation is a really big practice for parents. So oftentimes we're like, oh yeah, me too, I can relate. We launch into this long story about how we used to also like it, and then they just kind of drift off, right? So thinking about really seeing them and having that be the goal of a conversation. So you're not encouraging them to try something like go, you should do this, or oh, what about this kid, she's nice, she likes that too. Like there's no real direction. It's called non-directional dialogue, is the tip, like the name of it, non-directional dialogue, where because we can often get into these conversations where we're clearly we have an agenda, like we want to influence them to be more of something or to try something or to that security, when really just being seen and heard is like step one. So if you haven't yet, really established that kind of dynamic with your child, especially your middle child, you're going to want to do that in ways that they don't feel judged. They don't feel like you're inserting yourself into the conversation, and there's no goal here except to just take them in and really see them and witness them. And that's always super helpful. The other thing around peer pressure is that a lot of times kids don't know how to give good no, like how to decline. you know, and because oftentimes peer pressure comes from this idea that in order to be a peer, you need to give into the pressure. That's where the term comes from, right? And knowing how to say no thank you, and say perhaps next time, or I'd like to take a break from this, or can we check in, please? I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with this. Like those kinds of phrases are like rarely do kids kind of come across those on their own. So starting to practice that within the family. There are also some books out there that are really good for like middle-aged kids, getting a sense of their preferences, and again, being able to communicate in the moment. So I can come back and drop in a title or two when I can grab those titles for you. Oh, Sarah Kowalski's here. Hey, Sarah. I'm not sure if you just dropped in or if you're still around, but I'm glad you're here. If you have any questions, hon, Sarah's one of my smart, big-hearted, amazing clients who just joined the year-long immersion after a 6-month private coaching intensive with me. And she is such a big-hearted solo mom of her son, Aiden. So I'm just happy to have you here, Sarah. And otherwise, I'll roll on to the next question. So Sarah, I'll be looking to see if you throw something in the chat or not. So next question. Let's see. We've got, yes. All right. This is a good one. So how do I manage aggression or fighting siblings? Oh, we just had a really good conversation about this. And this is for Candace, Cricket, Teresa, and it looks like Sandra Fraser. So you must have put into your comments when you were sharing with us what it is that you would love support with right now. What's hardest in parenting? Something about siblings. So welcome. So glad you're here in the group. Cricket, Candace, Teresa, and Sandra. Really good to have you here. And what we're going to do is chat about siblings. So siblings are not that different from having 24 children at once in a classroom, it turns out, because they end up spending a lot of time together, and the ways that they rub each other the wrong way start to become really obvious. And or like competition over resources, attention, power. There's just some great themes here with siblings. So, but let's do siblings first and then aggression. Siblings can also be like that best friend your solo child just seems like they can't get enough of, or they also are like frenemies with, yeah, like they just are so drawn to them that they keep getting into conflicts. So the first thing I'm going to say is that having a sibling or having a frenemy is totally supportive of children's development, because they do need to have relationships where there is some affinity or like some love or some reason that they're together, where they're able to practice things like conflict. And one of the ways that we can help kids through these relationships is helping them recognize, especially when they need to disengage. Yeah, so for younger kids, that could be like a little break. For older kids, it could be like, maybe we don't spend time with that sibling for a whole day, right? For friends, it could be weeks. They want to take a little break from a friendship. And the reason I bring that up is because kids are so drawn, like I said, they're so developmentally like kind of compelled to keep engaging, because it's part of how they're figuring out their social world. They don't always realize that their lids are coming off, or that they're flooding, or that it's too stressful. It's not like the relationship is actually taking away too much instead of giving them what they need in that moment or in that sort of dynamic. So we often are the ones to say, hey, hun, it's looking like it's going to be important for us to, take a break here. And with siblings, I often like to make sure that my clients have each child have like the corner that they go to, like kind of like, let's go to our corners, like it's kind of a boxing match kind of ring metaphor. But that way they have a sense of like, where am I going to take myself when I'm overwhelmed? And I would establish a ground rule around that once we go to our corners or take 5 or however you decide to describe that taking space moment, that you have a ground rule that if somebody goes to take space, that people actually leave them alone, and that they, so that there's a respect around the need that, like, it's actually a physiological need to reset and to calm down your nervous system, to get that break from whatever it is that's triggering a stress response, right? I have seen siblings run each other ragged, and until this sort of calm down space, or this corner is established. And then finally, it sort of was like this, like, oh, there's a way that to de-escalate and take some space. The other thing that I have all my clients do with siblings, or who are working through conflicts with peers, is learn 4 key ways to solve problems that kids of all ages can benefit from, and adults too, by the way. Things like, you know, it's okay to decide to ignore it and walk away, take some space, like we just described. It's also a good idea to recognize if this is something we can talk through, and once we're all calm, and take turns listening and speaking. And also maybe be comfortable with not coming up with a solution right away, but at least people's perspectives were witnessed. So it might be like, okay, I don't like it how you don't ask first and grab the stuff out of my hand, you know, and the other kid's like, well, you hog it and never share it, and so I don't have it, and then when I ask, you ignore me. And sometimes that's all that gets done. And that's kind of new to parents and caregivers. Like, I had to learn that sometimes all that kids want to do is just like state the issue and be seen and heard, and it's not going to come to a conclusion this time, but it gave them an opportunity to raise it up. And then oftentimes too, we don't even need to do anything. Once the problem is stated, sometimes the kids will come up with their own solution from there, but making some space for them to have a chance to each speak and listen to each other is a great life skill and relationship, like, you know, skill as well, being able to do that. There are a few others as well, but that's kind of a good place to start, I believe. In terms of aggression, I like to use this framework called the red, yellow, green zone with my clients. It's just a simple idea I can share with you, is that you establish what is in the red zone that's never okay. And it's really important, especially to establish the red zone to start. Because if we don't establish the red zone, then we don't know where our hard line is, where we're going to always intervene and always insist that the behavior stop. So when I hear the word aggression, I really get concerned about, do you have a red zone established, and are you holding that line? Because without that baseline to kind of build from and kind of scaffold from, I'll explain scaffolding in a second. It's really, it can, to know when you're getting involved, like when are you the agent of change, right? Like, when are you going to step in and step up and say something? And then what you say matters, right? So I always like to make a statement that is more like a values-based statement, because it's not taking sides, right? It's like, hey, in our family, we solve our problems with words, not our hands and feet. In this household, everybody's body, you know, deserves to be safe. So, you know, this does not look safe to me. We need, you know, and that's where you can go, like, take your corners kind of moment. And when you do that, it gives you an opportunity to bring the kids into the yellow zone or the green zone. The yellow is like, this is acceptable for now, but it's something we're still working on. Like, in this circumstance, it's okay. Or maybe while my child, like the 2-year-old, might not be able to come up with their own words, and so I'm going to need to help them. Could be the yellow zone, and then the green zone will be that they'll come up with their own words. Like, they'll get there eventually. Whereas maybe for your 5-year-old, I have a client with a 2 and a 5. Your 5-year-old, you're going to have different expectations, saying like, you need, you know, like for them to walk away if they're going to, instead of yell, you could have them do that. So like, yeah, we don't yell in each other's faces. Yeah, we don't do that. Yeah, you need to walk away until you're ready to come back with a calm voice. What would you like to do? Would you like to go jump on the trampoline, or maybe drink some water, you know, on your, like, in your calm down corner, you know? Would you like me to help you find something to do? But yeah, yelling's not okay, right? So we're keeping the red line, but we're moving into yellow. Like, what could you do with this anger? What could you do with this aggression that's different? So moving them in that direction can be really helpful. Again, tip of the iceberg, I have a whole module on conflict resolution in my year-long program, and it's something we always refer to as needed in my private practice as well. So, and I keep referring to this Family Foundation immersion. If anybody would like to check it out, I can drop the link into the chat. We are, we just launched this cohort, and we have 2 spaces available in this cohort. And it's really important that if you're interested, that you get on my calendar as soon as possible. I'll be adding some more sessions very soon. And the reason is because we would need to chat and see if it's a good fit for you to join this group. We've got a great group of families. Sarah's part of it, who's here, and some other folks. So some other great folks. So hopefully that'll show up in the chat. I think I just dropped it in, but we'll see how that goes. All right. And then moving on to another question, but again, if you're here, make sure you let me know you're here so I can, oh, I see it just repeated it. So I can address your question, okay? Here's the information for the immersion. You can go check it out. We'll be traveling all the way through the school year, helping everybody transition back to school. We'll be heading through the holidays together as well, making sure everybody has what they need to kind of navigate what's up next with, you know, this world we're navigating together with COVID, with kind of getting back into socializing, navigating the school year, like I said, but also, you know, kids just keep growing and changing. It's like a moving target. And they need different things from us as they grow and change. And so if you find yourself feeling like you're lagging, like you're just not catching up with it, like the immersion is such a great way to build in routines and limits and conflict resolution and all these other skills that, you know, could really take your parenting to that next level where you feel much more calm and confident on a more consistent basis. And you don't have to do it alone. You get a mentor and a community. So check that out. See if it's a fit for you. Let me know, get on my calendar if it is. Okay, there's ways to book on that link. All right, next question. Yay, I love this. This is so fun, by the way, for me. I just so enjoy supporting parents. I'm gonna put two up at the same time and then address both of them in a row. This is Carolyn Cullinan is asking, you know, a really vulnerable question. Carolyn, I love you for this. I love that you did this, that you were willing to just say, hey, I don't have all the answers. She said, how do I know when I'm doing the right thing? Yeah, like it's not easy to know. And then Kara and Amanda are asking about dealing with constant defiance, which oftentimes brings up the same exact question of what Carolyn's asking, because I don't know about you, but when I have constant defiance, right, Sarah and I have talked a bit about this, I end up having less confidence in my parenting or in my care providing, because there must be something going on, right? Why is there this push? Why is there this push back always from the child, from your kids? And so I feel for all three of you ladies, your moms, Carolyn, Amanda, and Kara, and let me know if there's more to the story that I should know. Put it in the comments, even if it's on the replay, and I'll come back and chat with you in the Facebook comments, okay? Yeah, so how do I know if I'm doing the right thing? What is it like to navigate that? I feel you. I think the first thing would be, at the end of the day, can you say that you prioritize the relationship? And this is coming from a vulnerable place too, by the way, Carolyn. Like, I definitely come from a lineage where, you know, ancestrally, even like through the generations, that wasn't necessarily the priority, the relationship. It was more about get my kid in a position where they'll survive and be successful monetarily, right? So, and that made sense with the immigration story and everything that was coming through my family. However, what it did was it tended to leave the relationship last. And so there would be all this love and all this effort to set things up for success, but then the relationship would suffer from it. How many of you can relate to that? Some version of that, yeah. And so one thing I would just be asking myself as I go, and I do this as well, is when I'm having to, as we all do, figure out the balance between being strict and being supportive, or being firm and being kind, getting involved and letting our kids try and fail and learn from their failures or their mistakes. It can be so hard to know which way to go with those things. And so I have found it though in those moments, I'm like, what would be best for the relationship? Like, how can I make sure that there's love, trust, mutual respect in this connection here, where they know that no matter what, they're unconditionally loved, and they know that I'm going to be holding them to their best self, you know, their highest version of themselves. I'm going to hold that for them, that vision for them. if you ask just that question, am I prioritizing the relationship right now? It can steer you away from needless punishments or lots of bribes, and help you get a little more creative about motivation. Like I just had 32 parents come to our immersion motivation mastery weekend. Most of them are members of the immersion and the year long. And we talked about 5 other ways to motivate kids that really preserve the relationship. And that is also what I'll be talking about the next 5 Mondays or so, right here in the group, by the way. If you're curious about that, I'll just be dipping into each one a little bit. Not the same as an immersive weekend, like what Sarah and Lee and other people who are also in this group just got to experience, but some good refreshers from my clients as well, if you wanted to come. Anyway, so in the end, we're looking at the relationship, right? So if you're finding yourself, getting really frustrated and upset because they won't follow one of your guidelines, it might be worth it, or one of your expectations, it might be worth it to take a look at your approach. Like, am I finding a way to get on the same page with my kid here? Have I figured that out yet? Have I found a way to kind of get their buy-in to this, either this trip we're going on, or this rule that we're trying to follow, or this goal that we're setting together as a family, maybe to like eat healthier, whatever it is? Have I gotten my child's buy-in yet? Are we feeling like a partnership? And I feel like if we can keep asking those kinds of questions, and then also using great tools and strategies to build that partnership, then we're not going to go too far astray. At the end of the day, you can feel more confident. Hope that's helpful. You can also borrow a thought partner, right? So within your own natural community, are there a few parents that you can like ask these tough questions to? Like, I'm thinking about pulling my kid out of the summer camp because there's this one kid who's like really being rough, and it concerns me. Do you think I should pull them, or should I give them a chance to practice, kind of their own body safety stuff? What do you think? And if that community doesn't exist in your world, where you feel like you can kind of go a little deeper, right, with those questions, bring them here. Drop a post, tag me in it, so I can respond. Or if you wanted to also step into the possibility of mentorship, come hang with me and maybe even the immersion members, so you can get some feedback. It's one of the most important parts of the communities that I build, is being able to sort of get a thought partner and reality test your ideas. Like, am I off here? Until you get more confident in that area, and then you can move on to another area of parenting that you're maybe not as confident. Like, oh, now we have to have like the sex talk. That's going to be a whole other conversation. Or now we need to talk about what to do when you're in a situation with peer pressure. It just keeps these things keep rolling in. So, but what I can tell you is that over time, you get to have a better sense of like where you decide from. Where do you choose from and where do you decide from is even more important than the actual choice that you make, or the actual decision that you make, right? So if you're deciding from a place of, I'm going to prioritize my relationship, I'm going to hold my kid to a high standard that like of what they're capable of, and I'm going to make sure that they know that I'm here for them no matter what. Like, if you come from there over and over again and get a really good practice and sense of what that place is that you're coming from, over time you will build and your confidence and be able to choose more consistently from that place. And I just want to normalize that, like, this stuff is hard. Like, things are not obvious either. I mean, that's why like the quiz I made was based on 7 areas that are not intuitive. It's not like how to make sure your kid gets sleep, or like some of the more basic things that you just know, every parent knows they should try to get, nutrition and rest. And even those things aren't easy. I'm not saying they're easy, but things like how to run a routine where the kids are more independent and, taking ownership of chores and stuff like that. It's not necessarily easy, it doesn't necessarily come just naturally. So of course we need training. It's such a big job, and it's not always, like I said, obvious. So I love these questions. Thank you for asking them and for opening this dialogue. If you've heard anything that you like, please put it in the chat. Let me know. Let me know if something stood out to you. It helps me get to know you too. And then we're going to roll into the defiance piece. So sometimes kids are defiant because they don't know that we're prioritizing the relationship. We haven't shown that to them in a while. One way you can really get to the core of that is connecting before you correct. It can be such a big game changer if you make yourself pause and actually connect with your kid usually with a question more than a statement. So you'd say something like, oh, what's happening here? Or like, oh, maybe you'll share one observation and then a question like, oh, it seems like the two of you might need some support with working this out. Did I get that right? Or, how is it going? So instead of like, you two, stop it. I've heard that a bunch in my childhood. Stop it, right? Isn't that sort of the most supportive message? And it can lead to defiance because it's like, you don't even get what's going on here. And then they kind of discount your advice and your input. And then you've got a dynamic, a power struggle. The other thing you can do with defiance is really really ask the question of like, am I giving my kid enough power in ways that are acceptable, right? Because a lot of times defiance is all about power. They want more power over the situation. And we have to appreciate their position. They're young in life, and yet they don't understand how power works, and they have limited life experience to draw from. So these kids are walking around with like not a whole lot of reference points. So they're going to be trying to find their power, but they're not well informed. So they're going to be kind of throwing their power around in these funny ways that are just not necessarily, doesn't work for the family, it doesn't work for their community, it doesn't work for themselves even in the end of the day. And so when we see that happening, we can just like, again, name what it is. It's like, oh, they're really trying to figure out how power works right now. They're trying to figure out how they can have more influence, how they can have more autonomy. And sometimes we can just acknowledge it and just be like, wow, it seems like you'd really like some more control over the situation right now. Yeah, I mean, you're that's a big no that you're saying right now. Shows me that you would like a little more power right now. Well, this is happening, but so this is where I like to build in some more power. Is like give as much as you can without necessarily giving in. So how that could look is like, well, we are going out the door right now. It is time to go. Would you like to put your shoes on here or in the car? Oh, which shoes would you like to take? Like building in some choices for like, there's things that are up for, for them to influence and things that are not. And being really clear about what are the things that are fixed, they don't have influence over, that they just have to kind of get on board with. And what are some choices you can build in along the way? And I think that particularly, well, I'm curious, Amanda and Kara, how this lands with you with the defiance piece. Are you already doing that? Is that something that you'd like to learn more about how to do? Because it's a little bit of a fine line. Oftentimes what we do is we can be all demand or all support. When we're all demand, we're like running a show. We're like on top of things, right? We're sort of saying, okay, do this, or else, right? Or you like even like, sort of bribe them with like, well, you'll get your screen time if you just do this, if you just do this, if you just do this. Well, what ends up happening, I mean, please do that whenever you need to, okay? I'm not saying it's making that wrong because we just need to sometimes. But what I'm inviting you into is this possibility that instead of just like, of having this option of being very strong, of like making it happen, whether it's with, this reward or with a punishment, or like putting your hands up and being like, I don't care anymore. Like I'm giving in, like you've whined too many times, here's the lollipop kind of thing, which is kind of the other extreme. We can blend the two together, okay? So it can look something like I was describing of like, okay, well, here, we're going out the door, this is happening. That's not changing. However, here are some choices you have within how to influence how this goes. Or if the emotions are running really high, you can just empathize with them and say like, sweetie, I know it's so hard to have to stop your Legos right in the middle. I want, I feel for you right now. Yeah, I get frustrated too when I have to stop in the middle of something I really want to finish. That darn clock. I wish it said 3 o'clock instead of 4 or whatever, right? So there's ways you can empathize with them and connect before you correct, or connect before you, kind of muscle the transition. And then you can still be firm and kind along the way. So it's blending the supportive and the demanding, the kind and the firm together so that they can be alongside each other. It's an art, friends. This is something that I had practiced for years before I felt like I could just comfortably find that middle ground where the two kind of come together. I'm curious, in the chat, in the comments, what do you think? Do you think you're more on the demanding side or more on the supportive side? Or do you think that you have found a blend of the two? I'm really curious. Yeah. I know a lot of folks tend to be like high demand and like a little lower on the other one, or high support and a little lower on the demand. So I'm curious where you would put yourself on that. it's something that I help parents really identify too when they start working with me. So we know like, okay, so you got the demand down, right? How do we bring in some support in there? Or like you've got the support down, but how do we bring in a little more of that firmness so that you can still have the authority of that's appropriate. So your child isn't in charge all the time because they actually are not going to lead you to the best places all the time, are they? Yeah. Okay, if something was helpful that stood out to you, let me know in the chat. I'd love to always hear in the comments. I've got a couple more. So what techniques will help me be kinder to my son, even when I'm angry, from Erica? And how do I support my 8 and 12-year-old through their struggles? Sarah, thank you. Yes, demanding. I'm so glad you put that, you got that conversation rolling. And I feel like there's a way, Sarah, probably you might agree with this. I'm curious that you will a lot of us do this, demanding. You end up flipping your lid out of frustration when it doesn't go the way that you've been like advocating for. And then you can flip over to kind of like dropping it and just being like, fine, right? Like kind of giving in, or maybe shifting into, which is like kind of overly supportive in a way, like you're just sort of giving into whatever it is they want. Or you might actually carry that into the next conversation where you don't necessarily give in, but you're now in this like, there's almost like this vibe between you that has this power struggle where, you know, you might come in strong again the next time because it's what it took last time. And then it just sort of keeps going, right? I wonder if anybody else can relate to that. And if Sarah, if you can relate to that feeling of being demanding and then either giving in, giving up, or finding that even though it works, now there's like the stress or tension in the connection. And Sarah, by the way, is doing an amazing job of blending the two together. She's learning how to weave them together and has been asking such good questions along the way. Sarah, I'm so impressed with you. I love my clients. Okay, so Kylie is asking about her 8 and 12-year-old. So, I mean, this is a very vague question, kind of general, but I appreciate it, Kylie, because 8 and 12 are really special ages. They're special. They're special. They're so sweet. So, yeah, they do tend to like vacillate between like wanting to have you right there and really see them and witness them and be kind of their like pal and be alongside them, to, oh my gosh, I want to differentiate from you, mom, you're so not cool anymore, like, or whatever, right? Like just try to kind of get their space from you. And so that can be tricky because oftentimes we are in the position of having to sort of read them. Like, how much do they want me to sort of step in here? How much do they really want me to share my own personal perspective or story? And so what I would do is get into the practice of checking in with them and like kind of checking them out a little bit, realizing that what was really important when they were younger was to be like more consistent. Like your language was consistent, your rules are consistent, your everything, right? Like even like the routine being consistent, like could be a make or break a day, especially with toddlers and preschoolers up to like age 6 or 7. But then when they start to get into that middle childhood, like, you know, later childhood and middle and later, you end up realizing that they want variety, but it has to still be within the parameters, right? So like a 12-year-old will want to stay up late sometimes, yeah, and watch a movie, or will want to wash the car this week, but isn't interested in being the car washer from now on, right? So they're sort of in this like sampling life experience of trying out different things they can be independent with. Well, it's the same with our relationship with them. Sometimes they'll try out being really close and buddy with you, and then they'll also like assert some space and some boundaries with us. So we have to sort of notice when they're leaning in and lean into, and notice when they're leaning out and lean out a little bit too. And that can be really important in middle childhood. Another is what I mentioned at the beginning, which is like giving them the opportunity to explore their preferences and without penalizing them for changing their mind. So if they want to try a class, let them try it for, you know, like want to try a camp before they sign up for 3 weeks. Let them do that. And also because it really matters about what other kinds of kids are there and whether they feel connected to them is going to be a deciding factor. And so I would say just being open to the possibility that they're going to need to sample things. They're going to need to have the opportunity to change their mind, have the opportunity to lean in and lean out in terms of what they're responsible for. Although I would say, if you want to establish that Saturdays they help with household chores, maybe it's not always vacuuming, right? Maybe it's like, yeah, you can choose between these 5 things. Would you like to tackle the dishwasher, tackle the laundry, go do some weeding, or take care of this vacuuming that you did last week? So again, it's building in choices, but it's also notice that you're stacking skills, right? They're going to get to learn all these skills and take the time to teach them to be more independent with it. They start to get more excited about it. Like I have this one family where the 8-year-old was kind of being grumpy and defiant and just not necessarily feeling connected to the parent. At least they felt there was this gap. And they realized that they were not they hadn't caught up with the child's developmental level. So they were doing things like asking them to do chores that were just so simple and easy and just didn't really give them an opportunity to develop themselves and grow and learn a new skill. So they started to introduce newer, more complicated things like handling a sharp knife in the kitchen, or actually doing hot flame things right at the stove, how to use a piece of equipment like a lawnmower or a weed whacker, with support, kind of whatever they're ready for. But and then the child was really lit up and excited to like learn these new skills and kind of be seen for their current age rather than being treated like a child who was 2 years younger. So that can help with the 8 and 12-year-olds, Kylie. And I just love the big general question. I'm curious if there are any particular struggles. Maybe drop them in the comments if you get a chance to listen to this, so I can get you more detailed support. Okay. All right. And then the techniques to help you be kinder to your son, even when you're angry, Erica. I love this question. There's so much heart in it. I know Sarah can relate to this question, like, especially anyone who tends to go towards that more demanding style of parenting. Oh, this chair made a noise. They'll have this question because what you're really asking is, how do I bring in that support when I feel like being just high demand? Yeah, like how can I be kinder? And one of the things that a few of my clients have established, who tend to have a bit of that quicker response where they're not necessarily able to sort of gather their patience or kind of tune into the kindness or the love that they have for their kids, they have had to build in the practice of like, do no harm, walk away. And it doesn't mean don't come back. Actually, it's really important that you come back, but it's actually modeling that instead of being unkind, which is what I'm assuming happens here, when you're angry, you're just acknowledge that you have anger and you need some time to work it out. And they say in anger work, it's a lot of like move it or lose it. So you're gonna like move your body or you're gonna lose your temper. And one of the first things you can say is like, do no harm, to yourself, do no harm. So like the recommendation is actually put your hands down, whatever your hands might be trying to do, because we can like grab a kid, or we can even like kind of get rough with kids with our hands when we're angry if we don't sort of stay aware of what's happening, right? So just put your hands down or in your pockets or behind your back, close your mouth, stop talking, and walk away. The one thing that you might say is, I need a little break. I'm too upset right now. I need a break. And then walk away. Don't get that last word in. You don't have to. You really don't have to, I promise. You can come back and say different words is what usually happens, because the brain, when your lid is flipped, is not integrating. It's not regulating itself anymore. And so until you put that lid back on, like you said, you're too angry to be kind. You're probably not going to think of something kind to say at that moment. So the kindest thing you can do is take a little space, put your lid back on. Now, if you can't take the space, you can still do it right where you are. Like, let's say you're driving, you can pull over and take 3 deep breaths with your eyes closed and say, everybody need quiet. And just take it. Take your quiet. Yeah. Take those breaths. Knowing that you are physiologically changing the way your brain's working by slowing down, by closing your eyes, by giving yourself that moment and breathing, you can actually access kinder thoughts and kinder ideas. And sometimes it's not 3 breaths. I mean, 3 breaths is just to get to neutral. You're not going to get to kind necessarily. You need to actually get to your destination, have some time to cool down, and then come back. Another thing is when you have anger, like sometimes there's just truth in your anger. And oftentimes we will focus too much on getting a kid to do something or like the behavior side of it instead of just stating the facts. So try stating the facts. Like when you don't listen to me and I've asked 3 times, that makes me upset. I'm pretty angry right now. Yeah. Like, or even like, I don't like this. I don't like this, how we're talking to each other right now. It's not working for me. Yeah. Perhaps we need a break and we can try this again when both of us are ready to be kinder to each other. For a little one, sometimes it's like you really do a little bit of like mindset ninja or mindset magic, I should say. Please pardon the ninja reference, that was not appropriate. So there's like mindset magic of just saying like of challenging yourself. I'm like, am I being productive right now? Like, is this helpful or hurtful? And sometimes just asking that question can be helpful, as well as one of the other things we do is we do some positive self-talk of like, when you're soothing yourself, you're like, of course I'm angry. This is a frustrating situation. And I don't deserve to be ignored or like, you know, for my kid to hit me or whatever is going on. And we're going to get to the bottom of this. But right now I just need to like take care of myself for a second and just say, like, I get it. Like, this is not, of course I'm frustrated. It's a frustrating situation. And talk to yourself a little bit. I have one person who's come to several of my trainings who just loves that. She just loves the talking to herself because no one ever did in her life. And so finally she gets to do it for herself and she's practicing that. It's super helpful. So I know it's a big topic with a short amount of time. Erica, hopefully we've been able to bring in something useful for you. Let me know what stood out to you or if you have any follow-up questions. I'm going to roll into my final question here. So this is your chance, if you're listening, to drop a question in the chat or comment so I can support you as well. Oftentimes, even if people don't get to this live, this is one of my most popular kind of segments that I'm excited to share with you because we get to get into the real, the questions. And this one is definitely one of them. How do I keep me and my family calm in the face of meltdowns? Well, good news is this fall, I'm going to have an entire workshop just on navigating meltdowns, tantrums, and power struggles. Almost all of my clients have taken this workshop before they end up working with me or even during while their work with me, or they've watched a recording, because it's just so important to understand like what a meltdown is and what it isn't. What's happening in our brains when we are like our lids are fully flipped, and what we need to do to get those lids back on is so important. So what I would say is, first of all, acknowledge that meltdowns are a normal part of growing up. So our tantrums or power struggles, it is not always a sign that you've done something wrong or that your child is, you know, all the things that we could fill in there. I've been to now done workshops for like about, I'd say 600 parents or maybe more now on meltdowns and tantrums. And I always ask, what are some of the judgments you have about meltdowns and tantrums? And always like bad kid, bad parent, you know, wow, I wonder what's wrong with that person or something, right? A lot of judgment. So if we can just say, hey, guess what? It's actually developmentally normal for kids to melt down and have tantrums and power struggles. And for us to also melt down with them, like mirror that, like their lid flips, ours does too. As soon as we know that that's happening, we can have a lot more sort of empowerment and control of what happens next, right? Because instead of it happening to us, like we can say, oh, this is an experience I'm having and I understand it, yeah? So that's one thing that you'll get out of the workshop when I have it. Another is understanding like what to do and say at different stages of a meltdown. Because when kids are very upset and very escalated, that's the time that we need to focus on getting the calm back. And sometimes it is like addressing the problem just a tiny bit, but it can't be this elaborate many step kind of thought process or many choices or recalling a past experience, recalling a past event. Like all of those things are really hard for the brain to do when it's flooded and upset. What we can do is we can bring attention to the body, bring attention to the senses. We can change up the scene and redirect attention. So like our minds start focus on something besides whatever's triggering the upset. to take a break from the trigger and then come back to it when you feel more resourced. By the way, this is great for adults too. So if you have a situation where it keeps escalating, maybe give yourself a change of scene, regroup yourself, and then you can revisit whatever that trigger is or the triggering event or triggering person with more capacity and resource to, and maybe like a fresh tool or strategy to navigate that situation or relationship. Yeah, so kind of getting into that science of the meltdown and of relationships, I think that's a great place to start. And everybody needs a go-to calm down tool. I have a firm belief in that. I've seen it work wonders when I was in the classroom for myself, when I had all these interns of new teachers who are stressed out, panic. I was one of them, sweating in the armpits, everything like, oh, what do I do with this kid who's so upset? Because big emotions are upsetting to be around. You need a way to soothe yourself, whether that's a 4 square breath like we do in our calm down. We're going to do another 6-day training, looks like in October, giving you 6 ways to keep your nervous system, calm in those moments that flip your lid, the ones that test your patience the most. And having one of those be your go-to, like you know that breathing is good, or that closing your eyes and visualizing something, a different outcome is good, or that self-talk is so key. That walking away and getting to see a different change of scene is so important for you, because once you know what that is, you can use it and also be really transparent and share it with your kids. And then the part 2 of that is, once you found a calm down tool that works for you, you're going to be much more invested and confident and more likely to follow through on helping your child find their calm down tool, so that the whole family gets to have 1, 2, or 3. Each individual has a way that they can put that lid back on. And I keep doing this because there's a metaphor, a model that I teach in my programs and also in the Meltdowns workshop, developed by Dr. Daniel Siegel. So you can look up Brain in the Palm of Your Hand if you're interested, or come to our Meltdowns workshop. So one announcement I have, besides the fact that there are 2 spots left in our immersion cohort, if that's for you, you need to get in touch with me and let me know as soon as possible. Go to the immersion page and book a session with me. I'll be opening up some new spots as well today. So if you're listening to this recording on Monday, August 2nd, let me, go ahead and check out what spots are open. And the other announcement I have is that starting next week, we're going to be rolling through the 5 motivation hacks that I just worked on with my clients over the weekend. And of course, it's not the same as a 3-day virtual retreat, which is what we did. But I'll give you some highlights, some sneak peek into what it is that what I recommend for parents to use when they are kind of looking for ways of, increasing motivation without having to resort to a reward or a punishment. Because I think oftentimes we will end up feeling guilty if we end up using a punishment, especially. We'll end up kind of being concerned of like, is my child ever going to want to do this without the reward or without the consequence hanging over their head? And I want to help relieve that, so that you're not in that wondering. You've got some other options of ways to motivate kids. And this is my area of research in my master's. This is what I was obsessed with since I was, 19, trying to figure out how kids and parents and communities of kids are motivated from a place that's not fear-based or pleasing-based, which is kind of the rewards and punishments, right? And transactional, like, what do I get out of this? But it's kind of coming from a place that's more internal, right? Like true interest or true inspiration or true sense of like contributing to the community, or true like sense of wanting to develop yourself and your skills with your effort, and you can grow and change, and it's exciting to challenge yourself rather than kind of getting stuck in a rut. So this is what we're doing. We're going to be going over 5 proven motivation hacks based on the research that myself and others, my colleagues, have done, so that you can experience the less power struggles, be more likely to win your child's cooperation in the moment, and then also over time get more and more on the same page as a family. So Mondays at 2 p.m. we'll be here in the Raising Our Resilience Facebook group, and I'll be back to roll through the 5 proven strategies that are part of the model that I developed and have shared now with hundreds of parents. So super excited to have had a chance to be with you today. Thank you so much for all your great questions. Hopefully I've addressed several of them. Let me know if you have lingering questions, or even get on my calendar for a complimentary session, okay? And we'll have a chance to jam and look at your individual needs and concerns so that you can have a personalized strategy or two that you can roll away from the session with. So how you do that is same link. Go check out the immersion page, and there's a place where you can book with me for a 20-minute consult, totally complimentary. No quiz needed right now, just open sessions. So let me know if that's for you. And you can. Lots of love to everybody. So good to have this community together. Start dropping your questions and posts, share resources here. This is our community where we can support and uplift each other. Until next time, lots of love to you. Bye for now.